Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Trader Merlin Show for your Thursday afternoon edition. What a wild day out there today. Not at all what I expected, especially with regards to Tesla and some of the other big tech names. But we'll start there. The topic du jour was the AI big spend. And of course, I could probably bring Colin Teddards on because he'd have much greater understanding of the super details of what each company is spending on AI and what their objectives are going forward. I don't have that information, nor did I take the time to dig into it. But we have been talking about over the past, I would say, I don't know, Oliver, you know me as the doom and gloom. Of course, he's not here yet. If you look at the AI spending, there was a conversation we've had multiple times of at what point does the market get nervous that you're spending too much money on AI and not getting the rates of return that you needed. And that, I believe, came to fruition today with Microsoft's earnings, which were actually relatively decent. Here's the numbers, the top line numbers they posted. Earnings per share, they come out at $5.16 versus $3.92. I'd say that's absolutely crushing it. Revenue, not so good. We went to $51.5 billion versus the previous number of $51.2. So slight increase, but that was not, that's the estimate that was given. So slight increase of beat there, but not that great. The big issue that came up today or yesterday with Microsoft's earnings and why we saw it down so much today is the amount of money that they pumped into AI. And it seems to me like that is just going to continue. The rates of return may not be appealing to a lot of the major analysts out there. I saw a lot of negative analyst reviews on how they're not getting the rate of return. But, when you think about it, Microsoft has a pretty solid dominance in that space. Now, we can make the argument that Google has Gemini, which is going to kind of leapfrog them into the number one position. But Microsoft, with their big stake in OpenAI, plus their infrastructure and cloud sales, they're in a pretty prominent position. So when I was looking at Microsoft today, I got Intuitive Surgical up here. Let me get rid of that. Microsoft at one point today was just an absolutely brutal sell-off. Let's give you the max drawdown we had here from the close of yesterday to our low point this afternoon on Microsoft. We're down 12.58% on Mr. Softy. Well, we recouped a lot of that. Only ended up being down $9.99. Conveniently enough, for those of you who do follow technical analysis, we talked about it coming in and hitting that, beginning that gap. I do believe that I said that 420 mark or the 400 mark on the show a couple days ago would be a great buy point as it came into closing that gap. That's the question for now in my mind is, does it hold this or does it actually come through and all the way close this gap? I think buying Microsoft today at about 425 was probably a pretty good buying opportunity. Their numbers looked really good. And yeah, they are going to continue spending. Meta, which we'll talk about here in just a second, they said they're going to spend between 115 and 135 billion just this year alone. So it doesn't feel like it's slowing down. Dan says big gap to fill tomorrow. On both sides, right, Dan? I mean, you've got this giant unfilled gap on Microsoft to the bottom. I'm more inclined to think that you're going to see Microsoft rally up here. I saw a lot of call option buying on Microsoft today in big volume, unusual volume for like 600 strikes and 500 strikes for the next 120 days. So it does, at least for me, it feels like people are going to look at this as a buying opportunity and gobble up some Microsoft at a nice discount of roughly 10%. But it is all about AI. And if, let's just, I guess, jump into number 2 here, which was Meta. With Meta, totally different story. Meta was in the opposite direction here. Giant gap up, almost closed this gap entirely that we established back on October 30th was a big gap down for Meta on their last earnings. Today, we're getting the exact opposite gap up, closing that gap pretty much. Now, Meta also had pretty decent earnings. Here are their numbers. Earnings per share was $8.88 per share versus $8.16, so they beat their earnings expectations. And on revenue, $59.9 billion versus $58.4 billion. All in all, pretty good numbers for Meta. Now, I was kind of surprised to see Meta respond this way. Even though they had good numbers, so did Microsoft. They both had good numbers. I didn't see the number that Microsoft said they're going to continue to spend on AI. Meta, on the other hand, as I mentioned, $115 to $135 billion they expect to spend this year in AI and growth. That certainly was a positive reaction there from the market. I don't know. I feel like I could go either way on this, whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing. If you're spending that much money on AI, you better be positioned to get that money back through some rate of return, right? We have to have development of products and services to make sure that we get that money back. So Meta, and I think a couple of you were long Meta, if I'm not mistaken, which congrats. I mean, we were talking about the weakness in that yellow box down there and how that's kind of forming a double bottom. We have since, from that 600 mark, rallied significantly. Now, Meta's down a little bit in the after-hour session, just down about a half a percentage point. But all in all for the day, up 10%. I mean, this adds so much money to the market cap. And by the way, Microsoft today, this is wild. When you look at different company valuations, Microsoft lost $357 billion worth of market capitalization today. That's larger than most of the companies traded in the United States. $357 billion worth of market cap was lost on Mr. Softy here just for being down about 10%. So pretty wild there. Now, Meta going to continue to spend in that AI space, and that I don't know if that should come as a surprise. Mark Zuckerberg has been pretty adamant about the shift from the metaverse. Maybe they'll change their name again. Remember, they changed to Meta because he was all in on the metaverse, and that has just died on the vine. Zuckerberg has backtracked there significantly. Maybe they'll change their ticker symbol to, I don't know, FMAI, Facebook Meta AI. Who knows what they'll change their ticker symbol to. But Meta certainly reaping a lion's share of today's gains. Now, unfortunately for me, I've got those call options or those put options on Tesla at 432.50, which was not good. Kenny says, or Skynet. Yeah, Skynet, it's a question of who gets a Skynet first. Who's going to have Skynet first? Is it going to be OpenAI and Microsoft because they're in bed together? Is it going to be Gemini? Is it going to be Tesla? Or is it going to be, XAI, Grok? There's quite a few different possibilities here. I think that Elon's made it pretty clear he's concerned about AI turning into Skynet, whereas you look at Sam Altman, it doesn't really seem like he cares. It's funny. I feel like when I first was reading about Sam Altman and got to learn about Sam Altman, there was this altruistic, let's change the world and make it a better place. And now all of a sudden it feels like he's got a capitalist bug in him, and just mainly more looking at making profit. Marcia says implied volatility is high on silver puts, as it should be. That thing is all over the place. Real high volatility. So I don't have Tesla yet. I'll probably have Tesla delivered to me tomorrow. But here is your Tesla. Ugly day. We were up huge. Excuse me. I thought I would make the whole show without coughing. And there it is. My first cough of the show. Probably won't be the last. Tesla just got slaughtered today. I mean, this is not as bad as Microsoft for sure, but their earnings weren't that bad. Here is Tesla's numbers for the viewers out at home. Earnings per share, they come out at 50 cents per share versus 45-cent expectations, so beating their 10% on earnings expectations. Revenue, though, slightly missed, $24.9 billion versus $25.1. Now, what is facing Tesla? What's the big problem on this thing? Well, as we talked about at least 2 years ago, when we used to have a gentleman that watched this show with regularity named Tom, Tom was always adamant and waving the flag that Tesla is just a car company. It's just like Ford, just like General Motors, it's just like Audi, it's the same thing. And there were many of us here who pushed back and said, no, they're not. They're a technology company. Yes, they have cars, but they also have robotics, they have AI. They're a multi-spectrum business, which is part of the reason I think their valuation could go much higher. To this day, we don't have a company, at least in my opinion, that is a dominant force in robotics. I know some of you say, Boston Dynamics and companies like that, but I just don't see any real Boston Dynamic products out there. So it seems to me like the first company that can get to market with a mass robotic product, not a Roomba or something like that, but like an actual droid that we could use, give me my C-3PO, and have it do work for me. I think whoever gets to market first with those is going to just absolutely reap tremendous rewards. And today, even though Tesla's numbers were okay, they made a couple of significant announcements. One of those announcements was that they are going to cease production in the Model S and the Model X, which I thought was kind of interesting. I like the Model X. I kind of want one. So they'll still have cars, but making a shift more towards robotics. Now, what was of interest in the press conference and what Elon Musk said was that he said this on, I think, Joe Rogan, that at one point he hopes that Tesla will have more robots in production in the world than there are humans, which would be absolutely wild. Now, the other side of this is, when is this going to happen? He plans on unveiling Optimus V3 in Q1, so that's going to be within the next couple of months. That would probably be a pretty big announcement, and I would expect Tesla to have a pretty aggressive pop to that. So you look at the action that happened in Tesla today. I wasn't pleased with it because obviously I'm going to be put those shares tomorrow at 432.50. I also bought the 420 puts to protect myself, and that's probably a wise choice just as a bit of a hedge here should this thing tank more tomorrow. I'm going to be fine. I think I told you I've got 5 contracts of this, so it's not the ton of money. It's, a couple $100,000 worth. But depending on how the next couple weeks go, I may start to build a bigger position in Tesla just because I am very optimistic, no pun intended, on the Optimus robot. And I think that if he can be first to market, he wasn't the first to market with electric vehicles, but if he can get first to market with a mass market robot, I think Tesla's really going to have a big surge here, and especially if he can get those production lines up and running. Part of the reason they're talking about scuttling the X and the S model Teslas is they want to use those assembly lines for robotics, which will be very interesting to see how that all pans out. So I'm pretty excited for what's going to happen. Soto says, iRobot. Yeah, well, I mean, we got the robotic vacuum cleaners. But I want a droid that's really going to push my real vacuum. Those little iRobot Roomba things, they barely clean. They're not that good. My vacuum cleaner, I got the Dyson Whirlwind Super Shark or something. Amazing. Oh, love it. All right, what'd you guys say to me? Pretty good for a company being boycotted. Yeah, not too bad. Steve says, still eyeing the 380 on Tesla. Ooh, I mean, let's put a line down there because obviously nothing is off the table at this point. You do have a little bit of negativity swirling around Tesla right now. Let me make that an exact 380 for you. If we get down to 380, I will probably look to add to my position here. I've got a good amount of free capital, and I'm tying up 500 shares of this right now. I'll probably my maximum on this will probably be about 2,300 shares, which will put it about the 1 million mark on that trade. But that'd be scaling into this bad boy. But that's also on the big assumption that he's going to deliver on those promises. And if it is in fact Q1 that he rolls out that robot, watch Tesla. I think you'll have a big spike here because no one else is going to be doing it. And I have a feeling that those robots are going to be gobbled up as quickly as they come off the assembly line. So, all right. Exiting autos and betting robotics. Well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily exiting autos, but getting rid of certain models, right? Probably the ones that have the least profit margin would be my assumption. Excuse me. I thought I was done coughing. I was all happy about that one. Kendall says, become self-aware at 214 Amos. Oh, that's from Terminator Skynet? Yeah. No. You got to go back and watch that movie. That was, for its time, way ahead of its time. Plus, it had some of the best one-liners from Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's fantastic. The T-1000. So it'll be huge. Big Ollie says, Nancy Pelosi did get... What did she do this time? I don't follow Nancy Pelosi. Was any of Elon Musk's bonus tied to EV sales? Not sure, Mike. I know that most of his bonus is just tied to... getting the market capitalization to $1 trillion, or to, what was it, 10 trillion? Some big high number like that. Yeah, so Dan says they still have the truck, the 3 and the Y, but they also are working on the semi. Now, for anyone here who has traveled on the I-5, so the I-5 is the interstate that goes from north to south through California. It actually goes all the way up into Canada. I-5 it's a great road because it gets you through everything, but it sucks because it's 2 lanes and there's trucks that are there, 18-wheelers, and you know what happens. You always get these 18-wheelers in like a convoy, and one will pop out and is doing 45 miles an hour when you should be doing 70 and just drives you absolutely crazy. When Tesla's semis get to the point that they have a mass fleet of semis, these guys will all be doing the same speed. It's just awesome. It'd be so great to have trucks not annoy you, and it'll be self-driving. I'm a truck driver. I've been on the I-5. Yeah, Mike, it's a tough road, man. If you're a truck driver, Mike, how come you guys pass? As soon as like a truck goes to pass, it feels like it goes slower than the truck it's passing. And I don't know whether that's because I'm just a jerk driver and they're like, hey, let's piss this guy off and go super slow. But every time it's like, okay, it shouldn't take you 5 minutes to pass the truck that you're passing. I think when we get to full self-driving, the job of a truck driver will just be to make sure that no emergencies happen. Let it just put it on autopilot and let that thing go. That would be awesome. Oh, that would make sense, Dan. They got out of the draft. It just, every time it cracks me up, I'm like, why? And, it's not like we can have a 6-lane highway right there. It's 2, and it's just torturous sometimes. So I think that once Tesla gets that one, that'll have a lot of big demand as well, though they're much bigger ticket items. I-5 Seattle is worse than Cali. I've actually been through all the way to Canada, but my expertise is usually the Southern California to Northern California route. It's tough. Noam says 95 is a buy for Microsoft. I'm going to go out on a limb there, Noam, and say you're not going to get. Okay, 395. Okay, I was like, bro, you're not going to see 95 on Microsoft. 395. Well, what would 395 be? We talked about the potential for it to close this gap, right? And that's 395 would be closing that gap. My question though is, with Microsoft's numbers so significant, these weren't weak numbers. They were great numbers. There was just speculation that it spent too much on AI, and I think that really brought it down significantly. I don't know. I have a hard time thinking. Look, you guys know my philosophy on gaps. My mentor told me back in the late 1990s that all gaps fill at some point. And I don't agree with that. Not every gap fills, but most do, right? At some point in time. Does this gap at 395, that origin goes all the way back to April 30th of last year, does that actually close? I don't know. We talked about it coming down to the 425 mark. We talked about it most likely bouncing from there because that's the beginning of that gap fill. You're going to have a psychological buy point, and today we did. It did tiptoe into that zone, but we did manage to get a rally out of it. And then again, all the call options that people are buying on Microsoft, it just leads me to believe that we're probably not going to fill this one right now. Now, don't get me wrong. You guys all know that I'm long Tesla, I'm short silver, I'm short the S&P, which was a great short this morning. I was like, here we go, right on, and then nothing. Trump was talking kind of heavy-handed about Iran, and that got shrugged off. But I'm conflicted here on which way I think this damn market's going to go. But I think Microsoft will probably have a little opportunistic rally here tomorrow and finish our Friday strong. But who knows? I did not think that Tesla was going to fall apart like it did today. Nor did I think that the S&P was going to rally back up and close almost unchanged on the day. Right? It was just slightly down, but look at that candle. If that doesn't scream bullishness, I don't know what does. Tough one. Mike says Tesla bouncing. I'm not worried about it until tomorrow. I got until tomorrow close. What are we at now? Oh yeah, 420. Wow. That'd be great if we got above 432.50. I'd actually like to see it close tomorrow at 432.49. Okay, so you guys just will whatever chi mojo you have. 432.49 is where I want it to close. Reason for that is I will be exercised. I will now have my Tesla shares, and I'll sell some covered calls much higher up against it because I think at some point it's going to go. What is a play if you're long Microsoft? If I'm Microsoft, I would be buying. If you were long Microsoft, I would say I would take some of your profits and I would look to buy some puts just as protection. Because what if there is in fact that overwhelming fear that Microsoft spent too much, that they're going to start to have some bad numbers and underperform? I don't believe that, but that's the narrative that's being pushed by the mainstream media. And if it does start to close this gap, I agree. I do think that we could see it go all the way down to 395 fairly quickly. So, for me, if you're long Microsoft and you're hurting right now, because today certainly was a swift kick in the cojones, I would buy some puts as protection, kind of like I did with Tesla, just to make sure that if it does go into panic mode, you don't get hurt too badly. We'll talk about silver. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I bought Tesla Leaps last year during the crash. I don't think I'm selling them anytime soon. Anyway, I think you'll be fine. Tesla Leaps might actually be a really good thing, especially on a day like today when it had a lot of pain. I am I am certainly in that camp, and I make no qualms about it. I am in the camp that I think Tesla is going to be the dominant force in robotics and AI, at least once they start rolling out with their Tesla bot. I think that's just, or the Optimus. I think that's just going to be fantastic. Yeah, is it? It just jumped to 432? I'm loving it. Well, you know what? It's actually 433. But Mike, remember yesterday, Tesla. Let's look at Tesla after earnings last night, right? So I was all giddy yesterday because I was like, "Oh, good, I'm so safe." We were up at 450 yesterday on that earnings call. So we went from 450 all the way down to 414. That's a $36 drop in Tesla just in a few hours here. Well, not a few hours, but I call it half a day. Pretty wild. And we'll see where we ultimately end up, but at least we're back up here. I'll spend a few $1,000s on insurance on my position, but that's okay. I'm fine with that because ultimately it'll end up being a good trade for me one way or the other. We'll just have to work a little bit harder. But yeah, to the original question there about what should you do if you're in Microsoft or Soto, I would buy puts just as a protection. It's worth it in my opinion to spend a couple of bucks for insurance because you just don't know. We can have our thoughts and ideas about where it's going to go, but you just never know. Would I have expected this pop? Look at this pop in Tesla in the last 5 minutes. I mean, you've had, for whatever reason, Tesla jumping from 418.58 to a high of, what's that number? It should be clicking on this. To a high of 435. So 418 to 435 in 5 minutes. That's a gain of almost 4% in 5 minutes. Wow. Wild. We'll see where it ends up tomorrow. I'm not worried about it one way or the other. I've got protection if it tanks, and if it goes up, I'll make all my money back on my call or my put option. So we'll be fine here on Tesla. What was the last one? Oh, Apple. So since we are in that moment right now, let's go look at AAPL. So Apple reported earnings, and their numbers, here they are. Apple came out with earnings per share of $2.84 versus $2.68. So nice improvement there. Record record iPhone sales. Sadly, I am part of their statistics this time because I did buy a brand new iPhone, which I don't think is that great. It's okay. It's nothing that much of an improvement over my iPhone 15 or 14. Revenue, $143.8 billion versus $138.4 billion. Almost looks like a dyslexic writer's dream right there with those numbers flipped backwards. But anyway, Apple looking pretty good as well. They've been spending a ton of money on AI, and you can see their earnings here. Significant pop as those numbers came out. So from the closing price here of Apple right there to our peak, Apple was up 4%. To its low point was down half or 0.05%. Hold on, not 0.05. 0.86%. Currently in the after hours up 1.7% and rallying right now. So a lot of volatility going on in this after hour session. I feel like something just happened that I'm not aware of because you saw Tesla skyrocket. You're seeing Apple all of a sudden go parabolic. Let's look at some of these other ones. Meta not doing anything. Let's look at Microsoft. Okay, so it's just Tesla and Apple having a really big pop right now for whatever reason. Oops. Yeah, Tesla really rocking. Tesla's at 435. Bring it on. Keep on rallying. So, to the initial conversation or initial starting point of this conversation, which was the AI big spend. Look, I've mentioned this before. I think that there's going to come a point when people freak out about it. Today, I think that was the first warning shot with Microsoft where people are like, did you spend too much money? You're not getting the rate of return we thought. But I still think there's a lot more money to be spent on AI. A lot more. Today, what was the other piece of news? You had, Amazon. Amazon saying they're potentially going to ink a deal with OpenAI for $50 billion. Well, $50 billion into OpenAI, who does that benefit? Microsoft, because Microsoft owns parts of OpenAI. Mike says, should there be an Autobahn-like lane in the I-5 going north and south for all the fast-moving cars? You mean for me when I'm driving? That's a great question, Mike. Now, this is going to ruffle the feathers of a lot of people here. I apologize, but this is just the way it is. American drivers, in general, oh God, I'm going to get some hate mail on this one. In general, American drivers are crappy drivers. They're absolutely horrible. They think they own the road. I can't believe that 90% of the people that are driving on the road have made it through a driver's test because you're garbage drivers. And it's not just California. California certainly is bad. Texas, you suck at driving. Washington, you suck at driving. You want to know who's an amazing driver? Germans. Germans are incredible. They respect the rules of the road. They know exactly what they're... On the Autobahn, you will never see someone stick in the fast lane. Never stay in the fast lane. Here in California, people are like, oh, that lane's open. I'll do 45 where I should be doing 65. I will just stay in the fast lane. Germans... I'm German, Ollie. I qualify as a good driver. Germans deserve the Autobahn because there's a specific set of rules. I'll give you an example. I agree with you. Danny says we can't zipper merge, save our lives, and then it starts in a road rage thing. It's terrible. I was born in Germany, and this is a few years back. I went to visit some friends. I was living in Milan at the time, and I rented an Opel Astra wagon. This is by no means a high performance vehicle. So we've got 4 people in this Opel Astra. I'm doing about 115 miles an hour on the Autobahn. And the rule for the Autobahn is that left lane is just to pass. And if you're not going to pass the car in front of you, don't get in that lane. And the moment that you pass, and you should accelerate to pass, by the way. And when you pass, you immediately get over. No camping out in the fast lane. So, I'm doing 115. My car's just, I'm giving all I got. I feel like Scotty from Star Trek. I'm giving all I got, Captain. I cannot give her any more. She's just going to the max. And there's like a sloped hill coming down behind me, and it's got to be at least a mile or more behind me. It's dark, and I can just see the lights flashing as I was passing someone. And I'm giving all I got to pass, and of course I pass. As soon as I pass this car, this Mercedes-Benz S550 comes by me mind you, I'm doing 115 miles an hour. It just came by so fast. My Opel Astra started waving, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to crash. It had to be doing 180, 200 miles an hour. And immediately, as soon as he did, he just went over in the slow lane. Efficient, great driving. So to get to the question, should we have an I-5 lane? I don't think so. The reason I say I don't think so is I think that the drivers here they just don't follow the rules. And I have a feeling that you're going to have a lane that's for the Autobahn. You can do maximum speed, and you'll get people crashing all the time because they're going to drive their cars way too fast that they've never had the opportunity. Autobahn people are very, 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 very good at driving. And of course, when you wreck your car doing 115, 120 miles an hour, 140, it's a matter of just scooping up the pieces and throwing you in a body bag. I mean, that's dangerous. So I think that somebody would sue the state of California for wrongful death if someone crashed their car on an unlimited speed limit. So I don't see it happening. I wish it was there, and I honestly wish that that we would go back through a much more rigid driving program, not just here in California, but every state. For those of you who've been to California and driven on our roads, you just got to shake your head sometimes, and it's like, what? How did you make it this far driving like this? Anyway. I have a friend. She always gets in the left lane on the Route 80 and drives. That's just you are a hazard if you're on a road where it's supposed to fast lane doing 50. It's really ridiculous. There's a bill in Arizona legislature to make a portion of the I-18 between Tucson and San Diego no speed limit. I do believe I believe Montana actually has roads that are no speed limit. And I'd like to see what the numbers are as far as crashes and things like that. But I think there should. I mean, especially in a long stretch road like between Northern and Southern California. For those of you who've never been to California, the drive from NorCal to SoCal, just to get to like San Francisco to Los Angeles, that's at least a 6-hour drive. And if you could whittle that down by me doing 120 miles an hour, I would probably get that down to 5 hours. But quite often the danger on the road isn't just you; it's obstacles and other drivers on the road. So, I think that's why vehicle insurance is getting worse. I think Russ Daddy, a lot of it is people making claims on their insurance that are probably fraudulent, and car insurance prices just higher and higher and higher. $100 Energy Master ticket of $5 off if you're over 90. Oh, there we go. Here in Cali, I hate when the off-ramp bottlenecks and drivers don't want to. It's so bad. Give me high-speed rail before Autobahn. Now, there you go, Alex. And to be fair, we've been on discussion to have high-speed rail forever. Why? If Elon Musk has the boring things. The problem with California is subterranean stuff is not really that great because we have earthquakes. And one earthquake, and all of a sudden, everything is screwed up if you're underground. So you could do light rail above ground and have some high-speed rail there. I'm all for it. I'm all for doing what Japan does with, an electrostatic train that just flies. Yep. Mike says it's 55 through the whole state. Yeah, terrible. And it ends up slowing things down, particularly on a 2-lane road. So I think AI will help that a lot. I'm willing to go out on a bet here and say that in 10 years, there will probably be an outlaw on maybe more than 10. But I imagine we will get to a point where you can't buy a manually driven vehicle. Do you guys think that that's going to happen or no? Do you think we're going to get to the point where you won't be able to go to Toyota or Honda or Ford and buy a vehicle that you can drive yourself? We'll just be buying self-driving cars. And I think that will probably come at some point. Think about it. If you have everything that's all programmed through AI, we will probably have a lot less accidents. Insurance prices will be much lower. Soda says 20 years. Yeah, that's probably about right. I think it's coming. It's coming. The Dutch public system should be studied more. Oh, they're great. Why is the Dutch so amazing? Because you can ride your bikes. Bicyclists rule the road in Holland. It's good. Mark says, I'm going to keep my old stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at now the smog-exempt vehicles, right? What's it before? 1973 or 1975 vehicles, smog-exempt. Those are collector's items. Collector's items. Oh, yeah. Definitely for roads, not for farms. I agree with you on that one. What was that? Uh-oh, we got an attorney in the room. I'll mind my P's and Q's today. I've been threatened by attorneys before. I said the words yo, yo, yo in sequence, referencing 50 Cent putting out a tweet, and I was threatened with a lawsuit. Gotta love people sometimes. All right, I don't know where we're on the subject. We went off on a big old tangent there. Let me run through our the rest of the Magnificent Seven, because I thought this was very, very interesting, the way that things transpired today. If you look at the bottom here, obviously we had Microsoft, which was, I'll be honest, I'm surprised it was down so much. I didn't think that the earnings were that bad. I thought the hoopla was a bit oversold. So unfortunately, I didn't make the call. I was so close to buying outright. I was going to buy some Microsoft today, but I didn't because of that gap, and then I was busy doing some other things and just didn't see the close. Obviously, Tesla, which has recouped almost all those losses already in the after-hour session, is now back into positive territory, which is kind of wild, up 3.85% right now in the after-hour session. Amazon. Amazon, I saw it come through chat there. Amazon's going to be laying off 16,000 people. Those are corporate jobs as well, so not just your assembly line stuff. Interesting to see how that all transpires. Again, I'm a believer that when you see companies go through and do big layoffs like that, certainly it's a sign that they believe that things are going to get a little bit tough going forward, right? Because why would you have bloat in your company when things are getting tough? You get rid of all that excess fat, if you will, from a business perspective. So two things. At least Amazon has identified that there are a lot of people who aren't earning their keep, or at least the salary doesn't get them the rate of return that they need. So you streamline operations. That typically will do what? In your next quarter, depending on how long it takes them to make these layoffs, you should start to see better earnings numbers because your cost of overhead has dropped significantly by getting rid of 16,000 people. And, those probably aren't $10,000 a year jobs. Those are probably much, much higher than that. So this could be good for the bottom line for Amazon in their next quarter or the quarter after that. Probably Q2 or 3 will be where we get to see the big impact of those numbers when they make the layoffs. NVIDIA surprisingly held. You had really the mid-pack here, which was Apple, Google, and NVIDIA, all right around the same numbers. NVIDIA was up 0.5 percentage point today, but the chart still doesn't do much for me. I still love NVIDIA. I still think that they're the kingpin of the whole move we're seeing, but their chart isn't that great. Yeah, it's slightly up, right? You could argue that we're at the top of kind of a slight channel here, but not the best looking chart, but still positive moving up. Google, still the king, right? Google reports earnings next week, so that'll be a good one. You have Google and Amazon reporting next week, so we at least get some more fireworks in the beginning of February, but this chart still looks great. We talked about this kind of bullish flag, the breakout, the upside. Really nothing here negative yet at all for Google or Alphabet going forward. Apple reported after hours. It's up. Well, it gave back almost all of it. It's only up 0.78%. But this is one that we talked about. Demand zones really playing its part, right? We had this demand zone between 247 and 244. We came down into it, bounced off it, dipped back into it, and now we've moved out of it. So, I mean, for those that say supply and demand zones don't work, this is actually fantastic. You had it rally right up in overhead supply zone, formed a shooting star, sold off from there. I mean, Apple's just like, I wish I could trade Apple. This is doing everything it should be doing, but I can't trade Apple. I'm not allowed to. Yep, Palantir reports on Tuesday. Let me go. We already talked about Meta, but Meta just soaring today, giving back a little bit in the after-hour session. But when I see giant gaps one way, I'm generally inclined to feel that they're going to go the opposite direction. So we look at Meta. I'm inclined to think you're going to see some sell-off in Meta tomorrow, and I'm inclined to see some rally in Microsoft tomorrow. Just the opposite direction of a major gap like this. Just more often than not, that's what happens. Now, on Tuesday, Palantir is reporting. You look where Palantir is right now, I would say you're standing on the edge of a cliff. Now, I like Palantir. I think I mentioned I have a friend who's in the tech space, and he's like, dude, just buy Palantir. I have not bought Palantir. I'm looking at this chart right now, and I'm not that comfortable with it. I don't want to go into Palantir's earnings holding when something's already sitting near demand. Now, of course, I just did that with Tesla, but I feel much more strongly about Tesla. You have this line, which is at 147.56. It's been bouncing off that. Like, it really has not closed below that level since, call it July of 2025. So that's great that it can't break it. But notice what's happened since October 31st. We've not made a new high, right? And we're making the same low. So technically, you could argue that this looks like a descending triangle. Some might call this a head and shoulders pattern. For those who are new, let me just draw it out here. Let's go. There is your left shoulder. Oh, I got to do this. Keep that tool on. Bam. Come on, Merlin. All right, so there we go. There is your right shoulder. There's the head. There's the right shoulder. So some could make the argument that you have a giant head and shoulders pattern here on Palantir. I don't know if I'm in that camp. I just don't feel that strongly about it at this moment in time from a technical perspective. Steve says Palantir at 100 looks good. I would agree with you there. Absolutely. You could put a much lower level. It feels like it's ready to break. And I know Oliver is always thinking I'm this doom and gloom guy. I'm not. I'm just looking at technical analysis. The 100 mark is right before this little gap that goes all the way back to April 23rd. I would contend that, you'd probably be okay even if you got in at like a 129.50, right? This low point here from July of last year that's, it's not looking great. I know we've got some people here who are long Palantir. I'm not saying that this is a terrible company. Not at all. I'm just saying that this looks like, from a pattern perspective and from charting, it looks like it's getting weaker and weaker. And going into earnings next week, that should be a pretty bad sign. Nice to be out here dropping. I'm okay with that. Oh, now you're okay with it? Look at doom and gloom, Ollie. Gosh, he's always doom and gloom. What else? We had comments on SLV today. So, bizarre move on silver. We had this huge range today, and I don't know why that range was, right? If you go from top to bottom, this was a range of 13% intraday for silver. Man. And it's funny because at one point I had on my silver puts, I was actually pretty profitable. I was in a pretty profitable position on those puts. I was like, all right, here we go. And it just continued to rip up to the upside and erase those. So even though you got this big red candle, it still reflects what? Buying pressure. Because at some point that candle, the hard red edge there, was a giant red candle. And for whatever reason, buyers stopped that thing from falling right around 96.50 and kept on pushing that price higher and higher and higher and higher. Wild swing for silver today. Another metal that we've been talking about quite a bit here lately. Let me get rid of the crypto space because that's just a nightmare. Let's go to metals and look at copper. So copper had a crazy move today as well. And I've mentioned this many times that my mentor and definitely some of the people I look up to in the trading and investing world are always looking at copper as a sign of economic growth, expansion, development, and just overall market sentiment. And that trend right now for copper, really going back to these lows here in August, has just been nothing but up. And that would lead you to believe, or at least leads me to believe, that that is a sign of economic growth and expansion. So all in all, this does look fairly positive for the economy when you see copper rallying like this. And this is the challenge I have as someone who looks at things from a macro perspective, right? Because if I've got one component, which is copper, that says, hey, we're looking really good, that means we're going to be building more homes, more expansion, more growth. Okay, great. But then you take a look at something else like the S&P, which has been trending strong. That actually reflects the same story. We've got a nice big trend here, higher highs, higher lows. The resilience today to shake off that over 1%. We were like 1.7% down today on the S&P, and we only finished down 0.21. Great resilience there. So this does support the argument that, okay, copper is showing great signs of economic growth. That does go in line with what we see here with the S&P. Then you look at something like the dollar index. Okay, dollar index getting crushed like this, that's also going to be supporting these markets. So we're seeing a lot of factors that line up for more upside movement here. You can look at that 10-year. This is the one that is the only negative on this because remember, we talked about this with Bill Addis yesterday. When you have a 10-year or a bond product increasing its yield, it typically means there's a lack of demand for that bond product, and the issuer is going to have to pay more interest to sell those bonds. In this case, these are government bonds, and they need to sell these to raise money to pay for all that deficit. So, or all the debt interest payments that they need. So seeing this rise like this is not a good sign from an economic growth perspective. It's a sign of risk to the overall market. But, you've got more factors pointing to the upside from a bullish perspective. So, I took a flyer on going short the S&P because of some macro political stuff, Israel, Iran, President Trump in Iran, and also watching the skyrocketing prices of the defense stocks. Defense stocks had me really kind of concerned to see things go that high. You guys tell me. Just type in the chat what you think. Why would you see a massive surge in the stock price of defense companies? We're talking, airplanes, missiles, bombs. Why would you see a massive rise in the valuations of defense companies? Is it during times of peace, when everything is fine and we're all good and hunky-dory? Or is it that their business is doing so well or that people anticipate the demand on those businesses? Yeah, and that's what I can't shake it. I can't shake that thought that Steve put in there because people thinking war. Naum says big orders. Yeah, look at Lockheed Martin. This is a huge run-up in price. And President Trump has done well at ruffling feathers, not to saying he's going to be the catalyst for it, but, Iran and Israel, that whole hotbed over there is always an issue. Iran's going to get their butt kicked. Well, we hope it doesn't get to that candle swinger, because if Iran and Israel go to war, which is kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen, then you know that Trump will get involved. I'd hate to see a global war start, because it just means a lot of people are going to die. I think I read some numbers say that over 2 million people have already died in the Russian-Ukraine conflict. That's too much loss of life for something so stupid, in my opinion. That's Lockheed Martin. You could go Northrop Grumman has also had a pretty amazing run. RTX, phenomenal run. Boeing, I saw someone mention here. They've had a pretty significant flight here as well. So, so who knows? I don't know. That was definitely a big guess, which is why I shorted the S&P. But I'm kind of conflicting myself because I'm betting long on Tesla. But I will probably once I get some closure on this Tesla trade, I have a feeling I'm probably going to be more in cash and not selling puts, or at least puts that are close to current price, because I don't know. Candle says no more instant smackdown. Russia's on Iran's side. Exactly. So we would go after Iran, protect Israel. Russia would jump in and protect Iran, and so would probably China. And depending on how ugly that escalates, it could be pretty bad. General Dynamics. Yep, there's another one. GD. Not as pronounced. TXT. I don't know Textron, but GE. Now, GE is obviously a bit more diversified in their holdings, but just looking at Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Northrop Grumman is just wild to me. All right, Larry says, I know you think I'm nuts for this, but I don't think anybody's nuts. I mean, you guys, I know I'm crazy, but I reserve judgment on all you. Okay, yeah, I think you're crazy. Okay, says I'm holding BNA after trimming off the top. It's a free ride for me. I had the remarkable fourth quarter and a great January. The chart makes 0 sense. I like that you put CENTS there. Yeah, if you're holding this one, Larry, you know as well as I do that you are playing with absolute fire, right? I mean, something that goes from $5 to $85 in under a week, I'm taking whatever profit I got and I'm happy with it. You'll see me running. I mean, you're down 45% in the after-hour session. It's already down to $30. I wouldn't touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. I'm glad you took some money off the table, especially if it's house money at this point. But you just gave back a lot. This is the gift horse. How often have you heard that phrase? Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. This is a gift stallion. That went from literally back in December of this year, December 26th, when Santa Claus came around. This was $1.30 and it rallied to 85, and you're still holding it. Larry, it's all you, but you know me, I'd be out, gone, long gone. XOM. So I gotta admit here, I'm puzzled on this one. So ExxonMobil took a giant jump because of the Venezuela thing. if I step back, and I'm a neophyte when it comes to oil. I don't follow oil. I like to trade it occasionally, but I'm not an oil expert. But it would seem to me that if one of the largest oil reserves is in Venezuela, and we take it over, we'll probably start to increase production, right? We'll do more exports, which is going to drop the price of oil. In my mind, I would think that is going to actually hurt the price of ExxonMobil and other companies. Now, I don't know what contracts are being made, if there's some exclusivity, what Exxon's going to be able to do there. I don't know. But certainly a phenomenal chart. You got a breakaway gap today, which I'm not a big fan of those. That typically leads to a reversal. So yeah, I don't know. I don't own these companies. I don't ExxonMobil or Chevron or ConocoPhillips. I don't own those ones. But remarkable chart. If it was me, just like the previous example, Anonimo, I would take some of my money off the table. Not all of it, because the trend here still is strong. This is actually, a sustainable trend. The other one was just an unsustainable trend, absolutely. Exxon people and Trump at odds in Venezuela. I think everyone's at odds in Venezuela. Trying to figure out what the heck is going on over there. All right, let me run through your economic calendar for mañana. Actually, we had some today, but nothing that was that groundbreaking. You had factory orders looked really good. Natural gas storage declined a little bit. Actually, doubled its decline, which not a surprise there. All right, Friday. Oh, it's Friday. Looking forward to that. Here's what we got cooking for the U.S. We do have our PPI numbers coming out. Look, I'm definitely in that camp of I don't know, trust, or believe the PPI numbers, but they're expected to come out at 0.2%, which would be just the same as the previous readings, meaning very low inflation. So all in all, that shouldn't be a big disruptor. Right now, there is because of the FOMC statement on Wednesday, pretty good chance we're not going to get a rate cut, at least until Jerome Powell is out of office, and then that'll be very interesting. I did, by the way, actually place those bets I was talking about on the program with Bill Addis. I put $50 on one and $10 on another. We'll see if that happens. It wouldn't surprise me to see Scott Bessent end up taking that one, which would be fine because I have a bet on that one. All right, earnings for tomorrow. Nothing really exciting on the earnings front. I think you have a couple gas companies reporting tomorrow. Let me bring that up for you right now. There's going to be a stupid ad in place. So, yeah, we have ExxonMobil reporting tomorrow. You have Chevron, American Express, Verizon, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, and Colgate-Palmolive. Those are just some of the bigger names out there. Just look at that price of Chevron, right? Chevron reports earnings before market open. They've got a market cap of $340 billion. And everybody knows Chevron. They're all over the place. Microsoft lost more market cap than all of Chevron today. That's just so crazy. Insane. Actually, if you... Not that I would feel sorry for Larry Ellison, but remember, we did a show, and it literally was one day where Larry Ellison was the richest man in the world. You guys might remember that one, ORCL. Look at it since that day. So over the last, let me just get it down to today's value, and we'll go from that point to where we closed at. Oracle has dropped 51% in the last 93 trading sessions. Now, at one point, this guy was the richest man in the world. Now, he might not even be top 10. It's killing you. I'm surprised you jump into that. I mean, I like the company, but it just doesn't make sense that it'd be that high of a valuation. But especially the closing the gap. I thought we would bounce, which we did, and then we broke through it. I'd just be looking for more downside movement here. What's that? Trend is your friend to the bend of the end, Steve. Buy some protection. Although, to be fair, you have a hammer formation today, so you might get a little pop in tomorrow. That's a great looking candle right there. I can turn volume on here if you like. Not that it's climactic, but definitely increasing volume near at the bottom. Oof. In at 180, hope you're selling some covered calls against that bad boy for right now. Sorry for that one. And then we got Bitcoin, which anybody who's long Bitcoin right should be nervous. If we get to that 80,000 mark, I think we got some pretty big downside move. So not good. All right, that's gonna do it for me. I'm tired of doing 1 hour shows. Why is Oracle selling off so much? I think it goes back to promises made and maybe not kept. This goes back to the discussion about OpenAI, and OpenAI saying, hey, we're going to spend tens of billions of dollars on Oracle to build out our data centers. And other companies have said the same thing, but OpenAI is the real big one that I believe may not come to fruition. So OpenAI is saying they're going to spend all this money. They don't have the money. They're not making any money. It's all riding the future of expectations. So I think that the main reason is there's a question of these commitments which help drive Oracle's share price up. I'm bringing it up for you. All right, you can see how quickly it shot up. I mean, really back here in June, which is where current price is pretty much at. We had a couple gap ups. This giant gap here was from OpenAI. I mean, it went from 241 all the way up to 340 off of OpenAI, saying they're going to invest. I forgot what it was. Was it 50 or 100 billion dollars? Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's one of those questions of OpenAI may not actually be able to give them that money, and Oracle is already starting to build out that infrastructure for OpenAI. So they're laying out capital, having not received any income for it, that could put them in a hole. Now, the good news for Oracle would be if they build all this infrastructure for AI capacity, somebody else will probably buy it, right? If the industry keeps on rolling that way. But it's still a big what if, and I think that's a big part of it. I think it's a big part of it. Hoping to buy Bitcoin under 50,000, probably use a bit. I hope it doesn't get that low, Mark. I might be a little bit more depressed if we got to 50K on Bitcoin, but I'm fine until 2035, so I got years to go. 2030. All right, so we've got your earnings. We talked about economic calendar, so that's going to do it for me for today. We'll have a nice glass of whiskey. And just by the way, everybody, I don't want to rub it in, but it's going to be 79 degrees out here in Southern California today. So for those of you who are on the East Coast struggling, come visit. We've got some sunshine. We got some warm beaches. It's pretty awesome out here in SoCal. Yeah, you don't have to deal with our politics too much. But anyway, that's going to do it for me, everybody. If you have something you want me to discuss on tomorrow's show, a topic, question, comment, concern, email me at tradermerlin@gmail.com. Put your comment down below, any of the YouTube videos as well, and I will get to all those on tomorrow's show. Take care, everybody.